Leiders en professionals van Nederland helpen om nog beter te worden in hun werk. Dat is het doel van DenkTank, de podcast van Denkproducties. Mijn naam is Christ Kolen, co-host van de show en zoals altijd hier samen met Denkproducties oprichter Hans Jansen.
Yes.
En Hans, wij hebben vandaag in de gast David Beckett. David, welcome.
Delighted to be here.
Ja, niet te verwarren met de voetballer.
David, but I was not going to make the joke because I thought he must have heard it a million times. Maar zoals jullie al horen, wij schakelen over naar het Engelands.
Ja.
Because David speaks English, he also speaks Dutch, but he's more confident in English.
That is true.
But first, Hans, I will ask you the question. How did you meet David and why did you think, let's bring him to the podcast?
Yes, well, I think David and I have been speaking at events. I don't do much speaking, but one of the events was for young event organizers in The Hague, and David was speaking there as well. And he's an expert in pitching, and pitching is, of course, a skill that is normally told only to be for slick sales guys, but we'll talk about that later because it's very relevant for everybody. And one of the topics that we do at Denkproducties is persuasion. So we do leadership, personal productivity, and persuasion. And I think pitching is kind of the very compact, high-impact version of persuasion.
The Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail is also a good description. Yeah.
And before you ask the first question, I also have to officially introduce you, David, because people might not know who you are, but you are helping companies, innovation teams, and startups to pitch. Win resources and business. And you're also the creator of the best 3 minutes pitch methodology.
Yes.
And you have trained almost 3,000 startups and over 36,000 professionals.
That's true.
Quite impressive, but you must be impressive as a pitch coach, I guess. Because you cannot say, I've trained a few professionals.
Yeah, I noticed if you put a number on things, as I developed, that people get a bit of confidence. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've done my workshop actually 1,204 times. And so I love it every single time. You might think at a certain moment you run out of energy, but it's always a different audience, helping them to get their story across in no time at all.
Nice. So, Hans, you were referring to pitching as like the compact version of persuasion. But maybe we have to start with exploring what a pitch is.
Yes, I think as a kind of a talk, then the pitch is often ascribed to standing in front of 5 clients, looking very difficult, and you have like 2 minutes, okay, like the Dragon's Den. But if you look at it more widely, then you often have to pitch, because you have you want to have a budget for your idea. Your colleagues need to allocate some time to you for your. You have a career. You want more money. So I think proper pitching is very relevant for everybody, and that's why I like to have this in the podcast. So it's not only for salespeople with a customer in front of them or a prospect, but it can be relevant to everybody. So that's why. And of course, people say, there was this famous writer, perhaps David knows. He said, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one. Being very, very compact and persuasive in a limited time is much more difficult than having a lot of time. Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I think to prepare a 30-minute presentation is difficult, but to get to a 3-minute pitch, that takes a lot of time. Yes. And you have to make good decisions about what to put in and what to leave out. And that's what I help people to do.
Yeah.
So the first question from us, David, is can you describe a little bit what kind of pitches there are and what are the differences between them?
Sure. So I started with startups, and probably people have seen things like Dragon's Den. But very quickly, I found that companies were asking me for pitch training. And what I learned over the 12 years that I've been doing this is that people are pitching in so many different situations when you're working in a company. Like Hans said, you're pitching to, say, another department because you need some resources. You need some people to put some time in or give you data. You might be pitching to your boss for a raise or a promotion. And of course, there's higher stakes things like pitching to the board and then pitching to customers. So I think there's lots of different times where we need to tell our story and convince people to take a next step. I think that's the thing about a pitch. You're looking to get a next step, but people have no time at all. Everybody's busy. So that's where a short pitch can capture people's attention. And once they're hooked, then we might go in the details. But getting them hooked on the value in all these different situations is the starting point.
Yeah. And is there kind of do you have kind of a categorization of pitches so that you say, you know, there's this kind of types of pitches with all their own rules and their own methodology?
Sure. I think there's a couple of different situations, but for every pitch, the first thing I would say is get really focused on who's the audience and what do they care about, and then what's the objective? What do I want these people to do as a result of the pitch? So these are two things. Probably we'll talk about this a little bit further during the rest of our talk. But then you think about the different types of pitches. There's that one sentence. So what basically are you doing? And that ideally, somebody would be able to take that from you and be able to pass it on. So what they're working on and what this person is working on is X. They're going to change this. So that would be a one sentence. Then you have the shorter things or the slightly longer things, which are, what do you do? And this might be, say, in a Zoom meeting where you've just joined a new team. They say, please introduce yourself. And that might be something which ideally is about 25, 30 seconds instead of 3 to 5 minutes. And there's, I think, a lot of situations where you get that question, what do you do? Where you need to answer it in about 30 seconds. A network event, company social event, but it's business. And indeed, when you're meeting senior people where they're in a hurry. So I would say there's that one sentence, what I call the handshake pitch. I think of the elevator pitch, but I can explain why I say the handshake pitch.
So the handshake pitch is kind of a label. In one sentence, you say, this is what I do.
Yeah, I think there's the one sentence pitch. I call it the simple statement. What change are you bringing into the world? Then there's the handshake pitch, which is the shake hands. So, this is who I am. So what do you do? And people are not asking for a life history of your business.
It started 20 years ago. No.
Exactly that. And that happens, right? We haven't really thought, what will I say when someone says, what do you do? But what people are really looking for is a quick check-in. Like, have we got value for each other? Have we got something in common? Have you got value for me? Could I help you? Then, of course, there's the next step where people are asking you for a bit more information. And that might be, for example, a 3-minute pitch. My company's called Best 3 Minutes because it's the sort of Swiss Army knife of pitching. And having a 3-minute story is enough to give a bit of detail, clarity on what you're solving, what you propose to do, why they might believe in you and who are the people behind it. But you're not going too much into the how. At this stage, you're just trying to hook them on the value. Then once you've hooked them on the value, then you could say you're beginning to transition into a presentation where people have said, okay, I get it. Now please tell me, what's your plan? And I think the pitch is especially that early stage of conversation to convince people to pay attention for the rest of the story. But we've got to grab them on the value right at that beginning of the conversation.
Yeah,
interesting.
So there's kind of three basic archipes, right?
Yeah, 3 levels.
The super short, the short one, and the 3-minute one.
Yeah.
So what would you say, can you give us for yourself the super short and the short one?
That's a challenge because it's no pressure for the pitch coach. So what I do is I help startups and professionals in companies to tell their story in no time at all so they can get the resources they really need to make their ideas come true.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a really powerful thing. Can you, what do you do, Hans? I'll put you on the block.
Oh, that's great. But we give people the best possible knowledge to become better at their work.
Yeah, and also in a fun and engaging way, I guess.
Yes, but you have to choose, right?
Yeah,
you
okay.
You have to limit.
But
and Chris, what do you do?
There you go. Putting you on the spot because it kind of shows you kind of know what you do, but to put it in a really concise, attractive way, it's kind of difficult to do, but it's good to think about it.
But what I like about your comment, Hans, is that you talk about a transformation. It's not just we're putting on events, but we do this to help them achieve that. So they become better at their work. And I think what most people get confused by is when someone says, what do you do? We think that they're asking us, what do I do on a daily basis?
Oh, yeah.
What did I do hour by hour? I mean, I'm creating keynote files and sometimes making videos. I'm posting on links. You know, people are not interested in my process. What they're interested in is what's the outcome for them. And so I think the key is to process that question of what do you do in more of a terms of what do you deliver? What are you helping people to change?
What do you do for me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And whether we're all very focused on our own goals. So when someone says, what do you do? We tend to focus on ourselves, but we need to remember they're interested in their goals. So we want to talk about what do we do that helps them reach their goals?
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess maybe that's the number one mistake, to focus too much on yourself and not enough on the other.
Absolutely. So I come across a lot of companies. I'm coaching, actually, I'm in a mad project at the moment. I just finished yesterday 80 startups in 3 weeks.
Okay.
And it's for a big event in Saudi Arabia. And the number one task that I have is to get them to focus on the problem they're solving. What's the thing that they are solving and what's the result? So less about technology and process, but more about here's a problem that's causing this amount of time or frustration or waste. And then we do this, this, and this, which results in this improvement in time, this saving of costs, this reduction of waste by X% or tons or time or whatever it is. So really getting them to focus on less on the product, but more on the problem you're solving, basics of what you do, and then the result. So indeed, what people tend to do is they say, here's our product, here's more of our product, here's more of our product. But I think what people want is, what basically are you solving? What basically do you do? And then how does that deliver an improvement? And indeed, how does that help me? And I think for anybody in a company, you're constantly in that situation where we need to translate what we're doing to how does it help the person in front of us that we're trying to convince.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's the most common mistake, right? We love to talk about the content of our job instead of what we achieve for the others.
Absolutely.
Do you have any other, because we love listening to mistakes and pitfalls, do you have any others that, I mean, if you've had thousands and hundreds and thousands of examples, you probably have a top 3 of the worst things that happen on a daily basis.
Well, I think the number one thing is not being prepared and thinking that you can wing it.
Oh, yeah.
And I hear that quite a bit. And I've seen different types of people in companies where you have somebody who comes in and says, I've done this loads of times, it's fine, it's not so serious. But you think, okay, you're preparing for a pitch to a group of people within the company, and this seems to matter, but you're saying it's not really that important. Then I've seen it afterwards where they're like, yeah, I wish I prepared more. Then you see somebody who's perhaps not the slickest person. They're not the person that you necessarily expect to have a great pitch. But they've prepared. They've got structure. They think about what they're going to say right at the beginning, what they're going to say in the middle, a clear ending, and it just delivers that professional feeling. Oh, wow, this person's serious about what they're doing. So I would say winging it, and there's various reasons why people wing it. Sometimes they say, yeah, I want to be spontaneous. But I've seen what spontaneous can look like, and sometimes it can look really bad. Yes, yeah. So I think you need the basics in place. Prepare like crazy for important moments. And of course, that gives you a basis to then improvise. But if you don't have the basics in place, it's really difficult to come up with additional good stuff.
Yeah. And it's also because it looks like a sign of confidence. I don't have to prepare. I'm experienced. I know my story. But of course, if you fail to nail it, then it looks crappy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the biggest other thing is time. And I think that's a really big theme of the whole topic of pitching, because why do we do a 1 sentence, a 25 seconds, a 3 minute instead of a 20, 30, 40 minute? Simply because people are busy and their attention's thin. There is data and there's various research on people's attention spans. There's the classic 12 seconds to 8 seconds, which is a bit flaky. Yeah. But the research that I found recently showed that they did psychological research on people's ability to concentrate on one set of tasks. And in 2003, it was 150 seconds. Any idea what it was in 2023? Maybe for the listeners to think for a moment.
So
have
it
a guess.
How much was
it? 150 seconds.
In 2003. So
2003.
That's like 21 years ago.
That's before social media.
Yes.
Maybe it's half now, I guess. 20, maybe less. But
I fear that it's less, but let's not estimate.
Turns out, this is even in 2023, 47 seconds.
More than
It's
half.
dropped by a phenomenal amount, 2/3. And that is a reflection of everybody's situation. We're all busy, or we at least feel we're busy. So when people come with a complex story, when we're in that phase of, I'm busy, I don't have time, and someone says, okay, so let me walk you through the 11 points of what we were going to work through, because it's quite a detailed story, the brain starts saying, whoa, I have no time. And even what you'll find is that people start immediately going into fight or flee mode, and generally fight. They start questioning stuff that you want to talk about immediately, and they start getting hypercritical. But if you go in with a message that says, I realize you're busy, there's so many things I could tell you, but I'm just going to focus on 3 big things. This one, this one, this one. Let me take you through it. You give them a message. I'm respecting your time. I'm taking into account you're busy, so I'm just going to give you the essentials, and then you can make a decision about what questions you want to ask.
It's quite brilliant, because the resistance drops immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think time is it's the most precious thing that anybody in business has got. So if we can reflect to the people we're trying to convince, I recognize you're busy, and then show that in what we tell, I think that's extremely powerful.
Yes. It reminds me of, I think psychologically it's called the strawberry effect. It's from negotiation. If you have like 5 arguments, or in your case 11 points, and there's always one that's not so good. I mean, and it's always one between 4 and 11. It's never in the top 3. But if you go to the supermarket and you see strawberries, and they all look great, but there's one in the how do you call it, in the tray that's not so good, you will not take the entire set. So if you only have your very, very best 3,
absolutely,
there's a lot of
there's no discussion.
No, you also avoid the danger of focusing on the thing that's just the weakest of the 11. Right?
Yeah, that's a great argument. I'm a big fan of the power of 3, and actually I've gone through presentation decks with a lot of professionals, and we come to the 8 bullet point slide. Yeah. And I ask people, if you could only tell 3 things, what would you tell? What would you take out? And I'm not kidding. Within 1 minute, without fail, those people find the answers.
Yeah.
And they find it almost effortlessly. I say, just challenge yourself. You could only tell 3 things. What would you tell? And they say, well, yeah, the last 2, to be honest, we put that in just to show that we know what we're talking about. And these 2 are basically the same. This one could come out. So actually it's this one, this one, this one. And then you think to yourself, why did we do that? Why did we put the 8 bullet points in there? And it comes back to that first thing. We feel that this is demonstrating we've done the homework. We've done the work. And so we want to show all the background of the work. But I think there's hacks to get around that. Things like, these are the many things we could talk about. Click, but these are the 3 things we're going to focus on. So you show, here's all the work we've done, but very quickly get them to the 3 points.
This is a brilliant tip.
Yes.
So sometimes I just step in for our listeners to create some tension and space around this tip, because it's quite brilliant to show it, but then skip it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I've done the homework, but I respect your time. We could talk about 8 things, but we're going to talk about 3.
Absolutely.
I think I kind of feel like a relief and happiness boiling up from my stomach.
Yeah.
And imagine if you have like 100 people in the audience in your company, and you're going to say that. So maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
No, I think it's actually a bit of a path and a technique. It's complexity, simplify, focus. You create a complex picture. There's many things I could talk about. Yeah. The brain says, please don't tell me complex things. But you quickly say, but there's 3 things we're going to focus on. The brain says, really? Oh, fabulous, because I thought this was complicated. Oh, well, give me the 3. I can handle 3, no problem. And then you say, here's the first, and the brain says, better listen because this sounds important. So you've gone from very quickly from a, oh my goodness, this looks complex, to, oh wow, I better listen. And I think that works. It's the same with data. You know, when you present data, people have to present data all the time in companies. And I think what people are often looking for is the conclusions, not the data. But the problem is, if you only show the conclusions, people will start questioning your source. And I've been in those meetings where people say, well, where's the numbers? Where's the data? I used to work for Canon for 16 years in their European head office and East European office, had those experiences. So what I came to the conclusion of is, again, show the chart, show the Excel file. So here's the source of the data. Click, but here's the conclusions. So that shows we did the homework, we've gone through the numbers, but what you really need to know is, what is it telling us? And that achieves both of those things. So it works with data as well.
Yeah.
And you were talking about like you have this 8 bullet list or this complex Excel file, and then you choose the most important things.
Yes.
Is there a method how to choose, or is it just, okay, I have all this data and then put people on the spot like you just told us, okay, now you have to choose, put a gun to their head and make it decide?
Most of the time, people know.
Okay.
They just know, because I think we underestimate ourselves a little bit. What happens is people are working on something, then it comes to that moment where we need to present it, convince other people, and we feel that our main messaging is not enough. So we feel like we need to add some more and then add some more detail, and in case they didn't quite get it, give them some more. But then when you're given that challenge, what are the 3 most important things? Almost instantly, people know. And so I think we need to be a bit confident in ourselves. We're doing the work. We are the people who know about this. We're talking to people who aren't experts. So they're not expecting to be walked through every single detail because they can't understand every single detail. They're not the expert like you are. So most of the time people find it. If you just challenge yourself, and every now and again you come to, okay, there really are 4 things. Okay, then do that 4, but that's better than 8.
Yeah. But you need some courage.
Yes.
Lef, we say in Dutch. Left courage. And
left
just
to create
decide.
leverage. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's so we talked a bit about the common mistakes, how to make a longer story short. Have you covered all the aspects of the second theme? So how do you really make your message as compact and short as possible?
I think the last thing is, how much can you actually say in a limited time? So I ask people in my workshops, how many words can you say in 1 minute and remain understandable? And I'm not joking. I've heard numbers between 2 and 1,000. And even 600 is not an outlier. I've quite regularly heard numbers around 5 or 600.
So people think in 1 minute you can say 600 words.
You know, 84% of presentations overrun their time. Why? Because we've all got a different idea of what time means. That's why we get different answers, 2, 1,000. So do you want to take a guess? How many words could you say in 1 minute and remain understandable?
I know the answer, so I'm not going to guess.
Yes, I write radio commercials, and then I know for 30 seconds you have 60 words max.
Okay.
So that's what we use for radio.
I kind of take for reading words in a minute, it's like, I think 250, and for speaking, maximum 100.
Okay, so my research is a bit different.
Yeah.
My reading is 260, so very similar.
Yeah.
Actually, it's about 150 is the max. And I did various research on it, but it's also from some experience. I had a period where I was editing 3-minute pitch scripts, and you found that if it was more than 450 words, it was impossible to finish. Now, actually, a kind of optimum is about 130 to 140 for a pitch. And there's different situations, like the radio commercial. There's a bit different of the goals of that radio commercial. It needs a bit of air to land some information.
Yeah.
In a pitch face-to-face, it needs some energy, something's happening. So sometimes you're speaking a bit quicker, but you also need some air for things to land. This is the thing that we're doing right now. So there's some time for people to process the information. So around about 140 words. And I've also done it myself. I've been in pitch competitions myself. I even won one once. And, I tried to hack that. I tried to put more words in. I just couldn't get more than 450 words in. You just run out of time. So the reason I mention that is maybe it's more useful to know how many sentences that is. And it's about 8 or 9 short sentences. So if
for a 3-minute pitch?
No, for a 1-minute pitch.
Okay,
so per minute, about 8 to 9 sentences. So for a 3-minute pitch, 25 to 27 sentences. Yeah. Now, even if you've got a 10-minute or a 20-minute presentation, that helps you get an idea. If I've got these topics I want to talk about, so you've got in a longer presentation, you might have 5. That means, say I've got 10 minutes, I've got 90 sentences. If I take 5 minutes on this topic, I'm going to run out of time. So I think overestimating the time that's available is a very common mistake. And so it's good to get a feeling of what exactly does 1 minute mean? What exactly does 3 minutes mean? It's 8 to 9 sentences per minute.
If you have 8 points, then it's 1 sentence per point, which doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Very good math.
Yes, I'm very good at calculating. No.
Nice.
Yes.
So now we kind of understand mistakes people commonly make. We understand how to kind of make a short story, a good story short, a long story short. But there's also, you need to have some structure.
Yes.
How to present the information, what comes first. And can you tell us a bit about the structure of a good pitch?
Yes. So I think the first thing is have something that catches people's attention. Mm-hmm. That's the introduction. Mm-hmm. And that could be a bold statement, could be a statistic that surprises people. It could be a question, an easy to answer question or a rhetorical question. But something that says, I've thought about this and this is relevant for you. Then I think what we often want to do is talk about what are we working on. But I think it's always important to be clear, what are we trying to solve? What's the problem we're solving? And again, this is thinking before all of this, who's the audience, what do they care about, and what's the objective? And the first step is what challenges are they facing? What's on their mind? We might be presenting a new project or a product or some kind of proposal within the company. And the question will always be, well, why should I do this? Why I'm busy. Why should I do what you're asking? And I think having clarity on the problem that you're solving, the why you're doing this, is the answer to that always. What are you trying to solve? What problem is out there and how are you going to improve it? So when you think about a project, we really want to think first, why are we doing it? To solve this problem. So I can maybe give you one example from a company, and I'll leave the company unnamed. It was a consultancy company, one of the large ones, international company. And they were working on a project. They've been working for 2 years on taking their 6 data systems into one. And I asked the guy, why are you doing this? And he said, because we need 1 data system. I said, but well, maybe 6 is good. I don't know. Maybe you need those 6 data systems. He said, no, we've got to get to 1. And I went round in circles. And eventually I said, look, you're one of the consultants. You're working on this project, but you're going to use the outcome of this. Why do you need it? Then he started getting really animated. He said, I'll tell you why I need it. He said, this data, I take a train journey every day for an hour to work, and I can't do anything useful because this data isn't available on my mobile. Then I get to the office. Believe it or not, I've got 2 computers. I log into these systems. The data in this one doesn't match with this one. It takes me hours every week to reconcile that data, and there's hundreds of us doing it exactly the same thing, and it's driving us crazy, costing the company a fortune. I said, well, pitch that. Yeah. That is your story. That's the story to pitch, because that's the actual experience of real people every day in the company. Yes. So if you look at that, it's not, let's take the data system from 6 to 1. It's people are wasting time. They're hugely frustrated, costing the company hours and thousands of euros. So therefore, we want to invest this amount of money to take these 6 systems, turn it into mobile data in 1 system with 1 source of truth. And then you've definitely got a platform to start asking for resources because people can see the value.
Mm. Are you, if you have to choose, are you a fan of the pain or the gain side of it? Because, obviously you solve problems or you help realizing dreams, right? Which one works best?
As a person?
Yeah, as a person.
As a person, I'm more interested in the gain. Okay. But as a professional advisor for people pitching, I advise to get the pain really clear. And that's because, you know, if you think about people, say, wanting to present well, if I have 100 people in a room and I say, what you don't want to do is look a fool up there on stage, probably 70-something of those people are saying, absolutely, I just want to survive this thing. And there's about 25 to 30 who's saying, okay, I'm not so worried about looking a fool. I just want to shine. I want to succeed. Then if you say to that same group of people, what you really want to do is shine when it really matters, there's a bunch of them saying, I don't care about shining. I just don't want to look an idiot. So what are the numbers on that? And unfortunately, the negativity bias causes us to focus on pain. Now, I've often thought, why is that? And my own conclusion is very simple. We experience problems now.
Yeah.
The solution, we're asking people to make a jump of imagination, a leap of faith. And we can help them with that by painting them the picture and quantifying what that future might look like. But unfortunately, they're more likely to be triggered first by that pain, something that's going wrong, time, money, frustration, waste, because we can feel it and none of us like that.
Yeah. And it happens now. I mean, you address something that people experience today and yesterday, and otherwise you just have to believe that your solution will bring some good fortune in the future with all kinds of uncertainties, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about experiencing now something I can recognize and feel compared to something I have to imagine. It's not that you can't get them there, but you're more likely to get them there when they've understood what it is that you're solving.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Very nice.
Love it. Yes. So if you look at the anatomy of a pitch, so you have to have a very good entrance. Then you have to, you know, tell them very shortly on what's the problem you're solving.
Yes.
Are there more elements that should be in a brilliant pitch?
Yeah, it depends a bit on the situation, but let's give you the big highlights. I think, okay, strong introduction, a huge unsolved problem. Ideally huge, but quantified unsolved problem is the best one. Mm-hmm. So instead of saying parking is quite difficult, you say in big cities, there are hundreds of millions of drivers who take over 20 minutes every day to find a parking space. So it becomes a more quantified thing. Then, of course, you want to talk about what you propose to do to solve it. But ideally, not just what the product is, but ideally what it delivers. And you might not know exactly, but you could say our ambition is to get that 20 minutes down to 2. And we're going to do this, this, and this to get there. So you're giving a goal and an ambition, or you've already tested it and you know you could deliver. Today we could get to 10 minutes. In the next 2 years, we'll get to 2. So then the product, clearly we want to talk about a product or a project or a proposal. Then the next step is what's unique about it. And how does it help the company or the organization or the team or the other department do something new that is different to what they've done in the past. Now, of course, some people you might be presenting to where they really don't want revolutionary ideas. They're more conservative. They want to build on what's already there. Okay, then you need to reflect on that and think about how are we bringing this? Is it building on what already exists, or are we turning things upside down? Then, ideally, we get into some kind of track record, proof that it works. Now, when you have something that's brand new, you have to find other ways to build credibility. For example, this team has done this project before and it had these kind of results. We're bringing those skills to this project. I worked in this industry for X number of years. I've got this kind of experience, and that's what I'm going to bring to making this happen. So they want to know that they're in good hands and that there is a group of people or a person who has gone through this process before, and there's a path to success. And these people know exactly where that path is. They've trod it many times. Just to give an example, I had some operations on my feet and a few years ago, and there was a guy who came into the place to do the operation, and he's a grey hair. He said, I've done this operation hundreds of times. Oh, thank goodness, you know. So we want the surgeon who's done it hundreds of times, not the guy fresh out of college.
This is my first time. Oh, I'm so excited. You know?
I'm so excited to take some pieces of your foot off.
Yes.
Okay. It's my first time. Not feeling great. So I think introduction, pain, product, what's unique, and proof. And then, depending on the situation, you might want to have a very simple timeline what we're going to do next is this, this, and this. Now, what people tend to do is they feel like they've got to give this whole roadmap, 17 different milestones. I think people like 3.
Yeah.
In the next 3 months, we're going to do this. Longer term, we'll do this. And the big picture is that we can walk you through the details later. Yeah. And I think that's your get out of jail card for any kind of detail requirement. You can always tell people, we've got more detail if you'd like to know.
Yeah.
Then they can ask questions. They want to know, they'll ask. And then the people behind it. Who is the team that's going to make them be successful, or the person? So again, it could be relying on experience, telling what you've done in the past, or why this team is the right one to make this happen. They've got this skill, that skill, and they're making this going to be a success.
Yeah.
So I think pain, product, what's unique, and then proof, and then the team behind it, and a timeline. What's going to happen next? Then you come to the punchline. What's the ask? What do you need to make this happen? But by that time, you have already a good chance that they're in.
Yes, yeah. And for the people writing now, taking notes, with their headphones on, we have something for them, right?
Yes.
We have, because you've made a canvas for pitching, and
yes.
there are 2 different versions. One is really for startups, seeking money, so very
yes.
specific, but also a more general one for somebody who wants help, money, salary in a wider application. And we can have this canvas available to the listeners, right?
Special
for you. Yes.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And if you want some more information, best3minutes.com, but the special pitch deck is below in the show notes. We'll put a link.
Yes. Yeah. So years ago, you're probably familiar with the business model canvas. And years ago, in my first coaching project, somebody said to me, as a business model canvas, why don't you make a pitch canvas? And so luckily I did, because the startup pitch canvas has been downloaded about 100,000 times. But I made
a lot. I mean, you just told it for the second time, but I was thinking 100,000 downloads.
And it's quite niche.
Yes, so, okay.
It's
nice.
Very specific to startups. And actually, there have been startups from Australia, New Zealand, and everywhere else around the world who I've had messages from. But as I started working with companies, I realized that startups are focusing on some very specific things. For example, the investment ask is very different to if you're in a company. You're not just looking for money and equity. You're looking for something very different. For example, you might need sponsorship, somebody to just put their name on the project. You might need time from another department, 2 developers to spend 20% of their time on this project, for example.
Or maybe you need some budget to go to a denkproductie seminar.
Yes.
Exactly that.
But normally your boss will just give it to you. But if you have a very reluctant boss, you can use the pitch deck.
Absolutely. And of course, there's also resources, money, direct requests for the cash. And so I think what I realized is that the startup requirements, there was some overlap for people in companies, but there were some differences. So I made a specific version for my company workshops. It's the pitch canvas, the company edition, and I'll make that available for your listeners. Ooh. It's not normally published, so this is a unique opportunity.
Even more special.
Maybe one last thing in this podcast. You kind of recognize brilliant pitches.
Yes.
And you must be a collector. You must be always looking for, if people do a short presentation. So what are they doing?
Yes.
Just like we are, I'm also looking, is this a good speaker?
Good examples. So maybe you can show us, you have your laptop here, show us some good pitches so we can learn something from it.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. What we will do is, let me just... Gijs, we gaan eventjes de laptop openen. We doen even een knipje. En ik zorg ervoor dat de audiofiles erbij komen.
Ja. Dat is leuk verhaal.
Ja, zeker.
Ja. Very nice, zeggen wij dan.
Ja.
Very nice. In Dutch.
Let's do a power of 3 first.
Mm-hmm.
And can tell a little bit the background of this. So how do we do this? Do you want to...
Zullen we anders gewoon hier gaan staan?
So we'll just watch and then then we go back to the mics for the discussion.
Ja, nou nee, zullen we niet gewoon dat hij zegt van dit is de eerste en dan zetten we hem aan, doen we echt de audio ertussen, dan hebben we, uiteindelijk hebben we de audio wel al goed, snap je? In plaats van helemaal los.
Oké, maar dan moeten we er niet overheen praten.
Nee, dan moeten we luisteren naar
This is a short sharp. So the first one I'm going to show about the power of three. Maybe I'll just do a little introduction to explain.
Ja, top. Oké. Kom ik even hier gezellig bij staan.
So explain the first thing we're going to watch, David.
So we talked about the power of three, and I just want to show how that's done in a real pitch. Now, this is a bit of an on-stage pitch. So I realize people are not always pitching on stage, but you'll get the principles behind it. And this is a company called Moo Free. They make milk without cows. See what they did there? Moo Free. And they explain, why does it matter? Why is it important? And it's all about the impact of animal agriculture on the environment. So let's hear what he has to say.
And it's vitally important for three reasons. First, deforestation. Animal agriculture is responsible for almost all the degradation of the Amazon. Second, greenhouse gas emissions. Dairy alone is responsible for 4% of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions globally. And third, coming from drought-stricken California, water. The water footprint of a single gallon of milk is equivalent to taking a 2-month-long shower. It's true.
So what you hear there is he says it's vitally important for three reasons. And it gives a signal to the audience, oh, this is a 3-part story. Now, our brains like 3-part stories, various reasons, but they just do. So the brain says, oh, great, 3-part story. I like those. And then he says, first. What he also does is not first and then 5, 6, 7 sentences and then second. He gives you one sentence. First, this point. Second, this point. And third, this point. So in a short pitch, you might be tempted to go through all the details, but it's like headline, statement, and maybe one sentence to explain the statement, then on to the next thing. And this is a good execution of the power of three.
Yeah, great.
Very nice.
Yes.
Let's get to another one.
Yes.
Okay. Klein knipje, Gijs.
Hoppatee.
Let's take...
Good morning, everyone.
Rob van den Heuvel.
Yes.
There is Rob. Okay, so we go to the second one.
So this is a clip from Rob van den Heuvel, and he's the CEO of a company called SendCloud. They're huge now. But this is from when I coached him in 2014, I believe it was. And this is about how you can make an opening to capture people's attention. And this example is about establishing your credibility. So let's have a listen, and then I'll explain why I'm focusing on this one.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob van den Heuvel, and together with my 2 friends and co-founders, Bas and Zabi, we launched SendCloud. SendCloud connects web shops with shipping carriers to save them time and money. And today, I'm going to tell you why shipping carriers like DHL love us, and why over 400 web shops in the Netherlands are already using SendCloud on a daily basis.
Now, the background to why we structured it like this, and the structure is, hi, this is who we are, this is what we do, and I'm here to tell you why these people love working with us, these companies that you recognize. And you can find different variations on that for anybody in business. And the reason we did that is because, if you think about this audience and pitcher, the pitcher says, hi, we're SendCloud. Audience says, sorry, never heard of you. Don't know what it is.
Who cares? Yeah.
Then he says, we help web shops connect with shipping carriers, save time and money. And the brain says, sorry, what? What is that, Amazon or something? But they've already got shipping carriers. Sorry, don't understand. The brain very quickly comes to I don't really get it. But rather than just try and jump in and start convincing, we wanted to establish credibility. And I'm here to tell you why these 2 brands you recognize, PostNL and DHL, love working with us, and why over 400 web shops are already using our service on a daily basis. Now, if you think about how would you translate that for somebody in business, it's about telling right up front that you've got a track record. So this is the team that is working on this new project. It's the same team that worked on the successful project X, for example. So that instead of quickly going into the details, you establish credibility. Now, why does that matter? It's because people listen in a different way. If they know that this is a success story and there's proof already, they listen more optimistically through a filter of expectation rather than critical expectation. When they don't have that, everybody's got an opinion. You can quickly dislike or like something, maybe for not a great basis, not a great reason. But here, you give them a reason right up front. You should probably trust that we're going to succeed, that this is going to be a good pitch, a good proposition. So putting credibility up front really helps.
Yes, and especially if you're in fulfillment of e-commerce, and everybody knows this is either PostNL or DHL or one other, which are FedEx. But so if you know that the big players who you probably trust that they've made a good selection, you know that they just don't do business with lunatics. Then it gives some extra like bonus credibility on top. Yeah.
It's classic social proof. Huh? If somebody I trust trusts you, I'm more likely to trust you.
Yeah.
Very
good,
nice.
Good.
Let's go to number 3.
Because we have to have 3, not 8, right?
Maybe the tech for non-tech people?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Now, we already trust you completely, so...
We're all working
okay.
So, let's go to number 3.
This is about bringing a technical topic to non-tech people. How do you translate something to people who are not so tuned into the technology as you are, especially if you're an expert? And this is a competition called the Green Challenge. And actually, it's very focused about CO2 reduction. So it's useful to know that in the background. But I would ask the audience to ask themselves, do you know what SF6 is? And do you care right now? Probably the answer for 99.9% of people is, I have no idea. So let's see how Fabian here made it relevant for a wider audience.
We're all working towards one goal, and that is getting rid of the strongest greenhouse gas in existence, sulfur hexafluoride, or SF6. SF6 is 23,500 times as strong as carbon dioxide. And that's why its nominally low emissions actually are equivalent to more than 100 million cars on the road, added every year to the atmosphere. And the bad news really is, the usage of SF6 is at an all-time high, and it is growing.
Now, what you hear there, and it's maybe interesting to hear the background. So I would meet the finalists for this competition. It's a 500,000 prize, by the way. It was a big competition. And I would meet the 5 finalists 2 days before. And he had a super technical pitch, purely about his solution to it, to SF6. And halfway through the pitch, I said, I'm sorry, Fabian, I need to stop you. What is SF6? And he was kind of pissed off.
Yeah.
He said, what do you mean? You must know about SF6. It's way more damaging than CO2. So, okay, I know what CO2 is. How much more damaging is it? He said, more than 23,000 times. Okay, yeah, that sounds important. Yeah. Then I said, wait, but I still haven't heard of it. Why, is it used much? He said, yeah, it's the equivalent of 100 million extra cars on the road. Okay, now I get it. So what he did was help me understand something that I'd never heard of and made it relevant for me. Here's a comparison. Here's something you know that does a lot of damage. It's called CO2. Okay, I recognize that. Well, it's much worse than that. And as a result of its usage, it has this kind of impact, something I recognize. So I think sometimes if you know that you've got a technical aspect of your proposition, which they will not understand, the temptation is to try to get them to your level of understanding. But that just takes time, and that's what we don't have. So we need to think about, is there a shortcut? Could we get them with a comparison to something that they understand? And quite often you can find something like that's the equivalent of number of cars on the road. Another example I had was about plastic waste. And they gave the example of 8 billion kilos of plastic. But 8 billion kilos, I can't get my brain around that, right? You probably think, yeah, what does that look like? I'm too small to do anything about it. Instead, we said it's the equivalent of one garbage truck every minute dropping plastic into the Amsterdam canals. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
So it's good to think about how can we make the detail and the technical understandable for non-detailed, non-technical people.
Yeah. Love it.
Very nice.
I look at it, eh?
It is that I'm interviewing now because otherwise I would be writing everything down.
We have the files, I think.
Shall we do one last thing about, well, just introduce it.
Ja.
Knik.
Ja.
Oké, dadelijk gewoon meteen beginnen met praten.
Ja. Dit is de bonus.
Ja. Hoe sluiten we deze dadelijk af?
Ja, dat over zenuwen is denk ik nog wel een leuk dingetje. Even kort. Is dat iets wat... Ja.
Hey guys.
Oh, dit is... Oké.
Cool.
Ja.
Stop it after about 30 seconds.
Okay.
I thought I got the short version. Hold on, let me make sure I know where it stops.
Are taught by a grad student instructor. So we walk in on the first day, and before he says a word, what that something was, and paying $40,000 to be really uncomfortable. And that's when it became enough of a pain point that I said, either I'm going to drop out or I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah, 30 seconds exactly. Okay. Let's just take it to...
Ready? Cool.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
So, give us your introduction.
So I think putting yourself into the story can really help, and showing your experience and why you're bought into something can make a difference. Now, that's not always the case. You know, sometimes it's just a job, and I've experienced that. My first job in the Netherlands was in the fax department in Canon, the fax machine department. I'm sure there's even listeners who don't remember what it is. So it wasn't the most exciting products in the world, but I focused on the team. My goal was to be passionate about the team, to have the best team in Canon. That was my ambition. So whenever I presented, I always talked about the team as well as the products. Now, then think about for yourself, why are you doing this? And where do you sit in this story? And if you look hard enough, there's always something that you're excited about with a project, even the most straightforward project. But here's a bit more of a very conscious choice where somebody's going into a business because of their personal experience. It's a person who's struggling with education. So let's hear how they tell their story about why are they doing this?
My name is Kavita. I am the co-founder and CEO at Nectar, and we are building the classroom of the future. Well, I think the best place to start is why I'm here. I am autistic and I have ADHD. So no classroom that I've ever been in before has felt comfortable for me or my brain to be in. And then I got to college and I started paying $40,000 to be really uncomfortable. And that's when it became enough of a pain point that I said, either I'm going to drop out or I'm going to do something about it.
Now there, it's of course an emotional story, and that might not be the case for most people in business. But still, you can find a way to put yourself in that story. For example, that person I mentioned earlier on, it was his experience with the 6 data systems and one. It wasn't an objective, we need to do this because of the data. It's here I am, one person experiencing this every day, and there's hundreds of us. And as a result, it's costing this. But that human factor brings the story to a different level. So I think it's good to think about, where do you sit in this story? Why are you excited about what you're proposing? What makes you happy about this? There's another part of it that is important about this, because when we're pitching, we're under time pressure. So we tend to be very focused, concentrated, but we need something that makes it a bit lighter. When you talk about things you're excited about, eyes light up, you become animated. It becomes more of a kind of a human story, and that combined with the rational can be really powerful. So we need to find one thing along the way that says, this is why I'm doing this. This is what I'm excited about the result that we could deliver. And if you can do that, I think that really can elevate your pitch.
Yeah. And is it also like on the negative side, if you cannot find that, then why the hell are you even trying to trying to pitch at all? I mean, you have to have that, right? This is kind of a basic requirement.
Yeah, very much so. And actually, I'm thinking of so believe it or not, once upon a time, I helped Job Cohen with some of his communication. He had just failed to become the prime minister by one seat, and I got brought in for various reasons. And I went to see him speak at an event in, it was a big event for, I think it was the SP, and there were 1,500 people there. And I saw him speak, and I thought, he's not prepared. He hasn't thought about what he's going to tell. And afterwards, I had a session to talk with him about how you want to communicate in the media and so on. And I said to him, why did you not prepare? And he said, I just wanted to be myself. And I felt, okay, this went wrong. He was in a game which was about, it was a political game. You had some sharks out there. He wanted to be the nice guy who was just going along, seeing what happened. And I think that 3 months after that conversation, I asked him, is that really something you want to do? Do you want to play that shark's game, or do you want to be yourself? And he looked at his advisors and smiled. And 3 months later, he resigned. Now, I don't think that happened because I asked him that question. No, not at all. But that's indeed a question. Do you want to be, he wanted to be himself. He was a very human person, right? Great mayor. I interviewed him for another book. And that question of what do you need to do to get this done? If you need to take yourself out, if you need to be a different person, you might want to ask yourself, is this what I actually want to do? So that question of why are you doing this? What are you excited about? Ideally, there's an answer. Yeah. Yes, and then you can bring that into your pitch.
Yes, and otherwise it's a sign. Yeah.
But it's also maybe the last topic to discuss. It can feel vulnerable to be on stage, to show your personality.
Yes.
What's your advice for people how to deal with stress and nerves and everything uncomfortable about pitching and speaking?
I think the first thing is to accept that nerves are not bad per se. So nerves make us focus. They make us do the work. We don't want to look stupid on stage, so we prepare. And that's one of the reasons why we've got nerves. The problem is when it's overwhelming. And that happens sometimes. So you want to control the nerves and turn them into energy. And there's a few practical things you can do. And really practical things. I'm really focused on giving people things they can do. Mindset is important, but I find that if you can just do something that helps you get there, that's the best. So the first one is learn the first 60 seconds. Now, if you're doing a 3-minute pitch and it's really a high-stakes situation, I would recommend learn the whole thing. That's another debate, but especially for the first 5, 6, 7 sentences, get it rock solid so you could say it in your sleep. Because when you stand up in front of a group of people, you literally have a fight or flee response. I am one, they are many. So the instinct says, whoa, we're going to get eaten or beaten here, so we better be ready to fight or run. And what happens as a result is your muscles get tense, you start sweating, your body temperature gets up, and a part of your rational brain is even disconnected. You're not supposed to think in a fight or flee situation. So I've interviewed people in those first 60 seconds. What happened in the first 60 seconds? People say things like, it was an out-of-body experience. I don't remember what I said. So that stress causes us to blank out a little bit. And that can mean we end up saying things we don't want to say. So my recommendation, get it rock solid so that you could deliver no matter how you feel. Because if you get the first 60 seconds right, that's your platform for the rest of it. Now, there's a couple of other practical things. I'm a big fan of Amy Cuddy. I know some of the science has been challenged, but if you watch her TED Talk, that's 18 minutes you won't regret. And she came up with this research on power poses, hands on hips or over the head for 2 minutes or more. And whatever the science has been challenged, all I know is it really works. I've coached hundreds and hundreds of people to do this. It works. I do it as well. I also get nervous, but I stand at the side of the stage with my hands on my hips, 2 to 3 minutes, and that kind of just drops and you start to feel in control. And when you put it together with the third one, it's really powerful. So first 60 seconds, body posture for more than 2 or 3 minutes, And the third one is breathe. Just get some air in your lungs. Let your body get some air in, and that drops your cortisol, and cortisol is your stress drug. And so when you breathe and you concentrate on all the good stuff you've done to prepare, that helps you drop your body temperature, drops the adrenaline, and gets you into the physical state to do the job you came to do.
Yeah. Wow. This is, I think this is one of the longer podcasts that we recorded, but I just don't want to finish it.
No, we can talk. It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing.
Yes, thanks.
I've enjoyed it. I love talking about this stuff and helping people to do this thing called pitching.
It shows, yeah.
His name is David Beckett. Yeah. You can find him at best3minutes.com. The link to the canvas is in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please send it to all your colleagues, your boss, and your neighbors. Thank you very much, David.
I enjoyed it. Thanks very much for having me.
Yes.
En Hans, heb jij nog iets voor de luisteraars? Je moet natuurlijk abonneren op de podcast.
Ja, zou ik doen. Ja. En voor je eerstvolgende pitch, luister eens even na, pak het canvas erbij en 60 seconden uit je hoofd te rammen. Let's go.
Yes. Ja. Dankjewel, tot de volgende keer.
Yes. Bye.